Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Deb and I today for Measuring What Matters, Driving Employee Development Success. My name is Kaylee Hanson, and I am the Marketing Campaigns Manager here at GoCo. And we are so excited for this session today. We've had Deb do a few sessions for us in the past, and we are so excited to kick off our 2025 webinar series with Deb Calvert. I am going to just do a couple little housekeeping things really quick, but to get started, to get the chat rolling, it's sunny here in Dallas, but tomorrow it's supposed to be snowy. The seasons can't make up their minds, so I would like to know in the chat, what is your ideal time of the year? Is it the snowy weather? Do you want to be sitting on a beach, sipping a drink? What time of the year is your favorite? Deb, what about you? What's your favorite time of the year?
Mine's very, very specific. I like late February or early March here in Kansas City because my gardening indoor preparation stuff is in full swing. We might get the last snow of the year and it's warm enough and wet enough snow to go out and make a snowman. And there's still that promise of spring just on the other side of it. So the anticipation of that, what do you call that? Right in between winter and spring, wing, I don't know.
I love that. Yes, because you do garden a lot. I forgot about that. So that must be like you're getting excited, you're getting ready to just garden and plant. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. We have a lot of variation through the chat. We have, oh, autumn with a cup of coffee. Yes, Kelly, that is my ideal is the fall. I love the fall holidays and just everything that comes with it. So we have fall, winter, 70s and sunny whenever I can get it. So many good options. But thank you so much and continue to be putting in the chat your thoughts and your opinions throughout this webinar. I know that we are very eager to hear what y'all have to say. I will be sending the slides and the recording of this webinar post-webinar either later today or tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Additionally, I will share the Sherman HRCI codes at the end of the webinar as well, so stick around for that. Lastly, if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to put them in the little Q&A on Zoom instead of the chat. Just sometimes they get lost in the chat. So put any questions you have in the Q&A and we'll set aside some time at the end to get to them. But with that, Deb, I'm super excited to pass this over to you. I know that you are a former HR director with a Fortune 500 company, so I think that you will have so many great insights and things to say about this topic. So passing over to you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Hey, I'm going to ask everybody to do one more thing in the Zoom chat before we get our official start here. I don't know if you noticed, but Kaylee's got that little at the end of a cold or flu frog going on, and she is so great. GoCo is so amazing and setting us up to have these opportunities to visit with each other. And I just think we ought to do a fantastic shout out to Kaylee. So use your Zoom thumbs up and hands and hearts and chats and just let her know how much you appreciate everything she's doing here, because that's one of those unsung hero jobs that she has. So Kaylee, thank you. We do. We so much appreciate all the behind the scenes work that you do to make this kind of stuff
Deb, you're going to make me cry. Thank you so much. I just
happen.
appreciate working with incredible speakers like you and getting to chat with so many incredible people in the HR admin leadership world. So I'm excited for this one and thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, the least I can do. All right, so let me tell everybody this topic. It it came to me, well, slowly but surely. I realized I should probably do something on this topic because I kept hearing the laments of fellow colleagues in HR. And the lament, maybe you've said something like this. It goes like this. Um, we really believe in our organization in people development, but the budget gets cut or other things take over, or managers don't make time, or we're just so busy, we're short staffed. We never really get to do the people development that we want to do. So if you've ever thought or said anything like that, you're in good company. It's sadly not an uncommon lamentation that people have. I experienced it myself when I was in HR. I think the truth, though, if we're being honest about it, is that there's more we could be doing about this than we realize. And it starts with an acknowledgement that managers, they're human, right? They're just like any of us. They're going to focus on whatever it is that you're measuring. So I'll give you a classic example. I've been talking about this particular topic for year plus, but this came to me very recently. Even though I've been teaching this, talking about this, getting up on a soapbox about this for that long, um, came to me just a little bit before the holidays, a few weeks ago. And it was a sales manager who said it so perfectly. Like I had never been able to capture the words just like this. And the sales manager, someone I'm coaching, was highly frustrated because he got low marks on his performance appraisal, even though his sales numbers were really good. In fact, according to him, better than any of the other sales managers in the organization. He got low marks on his performance review because his company, for the first time, had begun to measure people development. They were measuring at the manager level how many people on the team grew in the past year, how many people were highly engaged in the past year, how many people on your team took classes for personal and professional development. They had several different kinds of metrics. So this was vastly different, though, from what they'd done in the past and from what most organizations do, which is for a sales manager, the metric, the one and only metric is sales performance. Right? A sales manager, you've got, let's say, 5 people on your team. They all have sales goals. You roll those up, and that becomes the sales manager's goal. And the success of a sales manager is typically that one single thing. Did you or did you not achieve the revenue goal? And that's what this sales manager had been measured by his entire career. So he was just really incensed that these other things were suddenly being thrown at him. Now, I will fault the company for not promoting this, supporting this, explaining this better, but I will also applaud the company for thinking in these terms, because that sales manager is a perfect example of what's going on in most places that don't take the step his company had taken. See, we're human, and managers, just like anyone else, will of course focus on what's being measured for their performance, for their pay review, for whatever else is going to be in the official record. All right, so this is a self-assessment moment, and I'll certainly welcome any questions, comments, thoughts, emotional outbursts that you might have when I say this. But if in your organization, all of your KPIs, your key performance indicators, all of your SMART goals and metrics, all of your desired outcomes pertain to the technical functional work of a manager, then it's really not going to go that far when you say, and we need managers to support people development. Because if you're not measuring people development, it will always get backburnered. Human nature. If you expect me to drive sales in the organization, I'm going to put my attention, my time, my effort, my skills, the things I've been known for and built up my entire career. I'm going to put all my efforts into the functional, technical side of the business. And the people development, yeah, nice to have, nice to talk about, but we don't have time. It always gets backburnered. So go ahead, let me have it there in the comments or the chat. Any thoughts you have about this? It's the premise for everything else we're going to talk about. If what I'm describing is familiar to you, let me know. If what I'm describing is something you've already overcome, well, by all means, let me know that too, so we can get some pro tips from folks who have been down this road. So I'll be looking for that in the chat and kind of monitoring as we go here. And yes, I agree. Measurements dictate behavior. We inspect what we expect, and it's sort of unfair to talk about something, but to measure something else. Whether you realize it or not, you're saying, this is the extra, this is the nice to have. What you're measuring is where people are always going to focus and go first. All right, well, think about then. Think about what is it that you are measuring for manager performance. Let's start with that. In some places, It's strictly the output of that functional area, like the sales team I was just talking to you about. In some places, it's budget targets. We managed expenses plus on the review. We hit the revenue goals plus on the review. In some places, it's about the performance of direct reports, but sadly, that's not as common as I sort of wish it was, right? But if you've got a team of direct reports and half of them are underperforming, what does that say about the manager? It does say something. Did they select correctly? Are they training and developing properly? Are they interacting with HR in ways that are appropriate for documentation and whatever the progressive discipline might be? Are they coaching to support someone to be able to perform at a higher level? There's no way around it. Managers will come to you and they'll say, well, so and so's underperforming, as if so and so's performance has nothing to do with the manager. So we probably shouldn't let managers duck, dodge, or deny their own responsibilities here. And one way to ensure higher performance is to make the manager more clearly responsible for it. For those roles that are customer facing, is customer satisfaction measured for that manager? Or is it, in some cases, process compliance that you're managing? We had no complaints from our partners, or we had complete adherence to our grant specifications, or something like that. What are you measuring? And what I've put up here are the things that are most often measured. What you don't see on this list are the things I'm advocating today that you consider managing. And those would be the metrics related to people development. I agree with what Christina posted here in the chat. Right? All too often, managers assume, they really do believe it, that it's HR's job. It's your job, HR folks, to make sure people have training and development. And as a manager, I might put up lots of barriers. I don't really understand that there are barriers, but I tell you, we don't have time for that training. We can't take people out of the field. We have no capacity for sending people to a program or to implement the changes that would help them. Managers are protective because they're so tightly focused on those technical functional deliverables they've been asked to drive. Okay. Now, here are some thoughts. If you were to hold managers accountable, I mean, really, truly, not just words only, no lip service here, but if you were to truly hold managers responsible for people development, you would be measuring things like retention. I know at first that sounds unfair because here we are in a very different situation than we were 20 years ago. People job hop, and there are lots of reasons why people choose to leave employers. Nonetheless, and we'll talk more about this, nonetheless, managers are still the number one consideration in terms of whether I stay or go from a job. So although managers may not be solely responsible, they have some responsibility. And that's why inside your organization, some managers have a better rate of retention than other managers do. That's how you would set these standards. What is the average retention rate? For peer managers within the same department, what's the best case and the worst case? Right? To look at some of those numbers that you already have and devise some metrics. And as soon as you do, right, as soon as you say to all the managers in your organization, we need to see retention rates of blank, well, you'll get more attention. There's no way around it. As soon as you measure it, you will get more attention and accountability from frontline managers when it comes to retention. Now, you'll want to set these parameters correctly. I am not at all advising that you try to get managers to retain everyone. This is about retention of the people who are performing well in your organization. So that'd be one thing to consider. Something else would be employee growth. What did employees on your team learn this year? What classes did they attend? In what ways did their confidence, competence, capacity improve this year versus last? And when you have a metric like that, pretty soon you will be reconditioning managers so that they'll stop doing the frontline work to drive results, and they'll start doing the manager work of coaching and developing people. Big problem. Big problem out there is that there's a huge misunderstanding. It's pervasive. Misunderstanding of what it means to be a servant leader. Now, hang on. If you consider yourself a servant leader, stay with me for just a moment. I'm going to make a clarification here. See, most people, the misunderstanding is that they've assumed that that particular term means I'm someone who rolls up my sleeves, I get right in the trenches, I work side by side with my team members. I would never ask my employees to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And managers who consider themselves to be servant leaders with that mindset, they often do frontline contributor work to save employees from having to do it themselves, to not burn out employees or overtax employees. They do it with a very true intention of thinking that they're helping employees. Here's the problem. Servant leadership, the term, the research behind that whole body of work, it was done by Robert Greenleaf decades ago. And Greenleaf said, the highest form of service you will ever do for another person is to help them become more capable in their own right. In other words, true servant leadership is all about creating ways for people to grow. And when managers roll up their sleeves, get in the trenches, protect employees from being overburdened, they often inhibit growth. And then you wonder why there's nobody prepared to fill a job if a manager were to leave, or if you are looking to increase productivity, you wonder why nobody's able to do more than they could do on day one when they were hired. So with good intentions, managers misunderstand servant leadership and they take the team in the wrong direction longer term. So maybe you measure something pertaining to employee growth and you set targets and you teach managers how to facilitate expanded confidence, competence, and capacity. I like this next one as a metric. And I've done some firsthand work with this. You could call it ramp up time. I call it speed to proficiency. So from the day someone is hired, your new hires, how long does it take before they are proficient? There should be a target for this. You've got some history, you've got some examples. There ought to be a target because you don't want to be waiting around a year later, having a manager shoulder shrug. They're a slower learner. They aren't there yet. They're still the newest member of the team. For most jobs, not all, but most jobs, speed to proficiency in key tasks ought to be quicker than it is in many places. And that's also driven by managers. What growth opportunities do they allow? How quickly do they let go and truly delegate something? How much time are they even spending with those new hires? You know, many managers absolutely hate the whole process of onboarding. New hires, they take so much time, they require so much effort. It took me a long time to fill the job. Now I'm just going to move on and do other things. But if you were to measure this, managers would have to be more invested in getting those new hires from a place of not able to fully able a little bit faster. I also advocate for measuring employee satisfaction, employee engagement. Sadly, in many organizations, there's some form of an employee engagement survey. And HR usually oversees that and bears a lot of responsibility for administering the survey and reporting the results. And then there's some sort of a handoff. Let's say these 4 managers had lower scores than the company average on managerial effectiveness, a common bucket in lots of engagement surveys. Well, then what? So you ask those 4 managers to create an action plan They don't really understand engagement and how important it is. They put something together, check the box, and it's done. Why isn't that in the performance review? You've got all the raw ingredients of a wonderful metric and a great target and a way to educate that manager and bring them along to a place of higher performance as a manager. So why not go ahead and measure it? And then let me give you one more. There are certainly many other things we could put on this list, but I tend to start with these 5 because they are tools you already have, things you're probably already thinking about. So this one might surprise you. How come managers more often aren't held accountable for the attendance of their employees at training? Now, this could also be attendance on the job. I also believe that has to do with selection and engagement, but we covered that already up under employee satisfaction, and I'll be building on it to show you those links in a moment. But getting people to training is fully the responsibility of a manager. That they provided permission and encouragement to go to training. They described the benefits to the employee so the employee didn't feel like they were being sentenced to a jail term while they sat in training. So they explained the benefits, they made the case for going to training, they provided the resources, the coverage, so that someone could be fully engaged in the training as opposed to there but not there. It either succeeds or fails based on how the manager sets up the training. And then afterwards, after training, and I'm talking about any training, technology skills, soft skills, functional skills, whatever it might be, new systems, the HRIS, whatever training you're thinking about here, has a lot to do with the manager's reinforcement. Did the manager, did they go to training so they understood the terminology and could answer the questions that employees have after training? Did they change processes or questions they're asking in their one-to-one meetings or expectations for the employee that would affirm the importance of that training? These are things you can measure. And when you do, managers, of course, are going to be more inclined to follow suit. Now, there's one other piece I want to talk about, because it's not just about the development of other people. I also am a fan of having metrics pertaining to the manager's own development. This is where you get bench strength. This is where you have your succession management in a situation where you've got your choice when higher level jobs open up. It's all about, do you or don't you develop your managers? Yes, directors and others that managers report to, they should be held accountable for this, but the manager should also be held accountable for their own development. Presumably, you aren't promoting people into management roles to stay forever in management roles. Even if they stay in the same role with the same job title at the same level in the organization, by virtue of change in most industries and in the world around us, that job is going to change. It's going to require different soft skills or change management or critical thinking that more than it did when they first took the job. So you want managers to be ready for that. You want them to continually grow. If nothing else, you want them to grow as coaches and people developers, as leaders, even at that frontline manager role. Now I'm going to pause here because I know I have thrown a lot at you. That was the fire hose portion of the session. I've thrown a lot at you, and I would love to hear how it's tracking for you. It's also a great time to pop into the chat there and mention anything I did not include that you believe ought to be measured for managers, but isn't commonly measured for people development. And as you're doing that, and I'll scan those reactions, let me give you the underpinnings, right? That everything I've said so far, it's really about this philosophy. Many companies purportedly have this philosophy. It's on the website, but the practices don't really align with the philosophy. So what I'm advocating for in everything that I've said so far is that as an organization, you are truly putting people first. You are, through managers, setting up the organization to build the people who will build the business. And this is a long-term play. A short-term play is functional, technical, get the work done today. Long-term is and, not instead of, but and as we get that day-to-day work done, we're also developing people. My philosophy is that any manager, any people manager has two responsibilities: to simultaneously manage work and lead people. And when you get there, right, when you get there, it's got to be more than a philosophy. It's got to be backed up with metrics like the ones we've been talking about. Ultimately, when I say putting people first, the pushback that I get is two things. We've got stakeholders. We've got to worry about profitability. And I have to ask, how do you expect to get those profits and sustain those profits if you don't have people who are highly engaged, who are growing, who can help the organization to grow? The profits are eroded when you have poor retention and lots of turnover and people who are only moderately engaged and they're not really applying much discretionary effort to their work. I agree that people drive profits and people solve problems and people make improvements. So putting people first isn't just some kumbaya kind of a philosophy. It is a real, true, proven business imperative. Now, the other pushback I get when I say people first is, well, sometimes even in my own organization, I've been doing this for 20 years. Sometimes people will say, based on a decision or an action taken, that's not people first. Right? They don't like the decision or they feel like it violated something they hoped to see happening for them. So at that point, I have to remind folks it's people, that's plural. People first, not person first. And you've got lots of people to think about in an organization, customers included. So what are the sorts of decisions long-term that set the company and your clients and your employees up for success? That's what we're after. All right. Well, obviously, managers, the ones who are effective, the ones who do develop competence, confidence, and capacity in an organization, they do certain things. They do certain things differently from other managers who forget that part of the job is leading people. That they're using command and control and authority and their job title to push people to do things. And that works to a certain extent, but it's harder and harder to sustain over time. Really effective managers, the ones who truly show up as leaders, they enable and they engage and they also ennoble. If that's a word you haven't heard before, hang on, I'll define it. But I'm going to start with the one you have heard a lot, and that's engagement. Just some reminders here. Engagement, a definition I really like, is from the CEB. I like it because it calls out two important things that often get left at the wayside. Employee engagement is a heightened emotional, that's the first one that often gets overlooked. No way around it. It is an emotional connection. And if, only if, the employee feels that emotional commitment, that connection to the organization, then they'll apply additional discretionary effort to their work. You got to remind managers, make no mistake, every minute of every day, every employee is making choices. How hard am I really going to work on this? How much additional discretionary effort will I apply in this moment versus phoning it in or maybe even being actively disengaged because I don't feel emotionally connected to the work? It's an if-then, cause and effect sort of scenario driven mostly by managers. Now, let me address this word. I just want to be sure that I'm clear on this. Emotional commitment means I care about the work, I care about the people, I care about what we're doing. I understand the higher meaning and purpose of our work. When people have that, they're 4 times as likely to jump in with that additional discretionary effort, 4 times as likely versus the rational commitments that managers more often rely on. See, it's a rational sort of a commitment to say you won't get put on performance improvement plan, or you will get high marks on the appraisal, or you might be eligible for the promotion if. Those are all extrinsic, they're rational sorts of things. Emotional is what's behind it. Like, why do I care if I get a raise or not? Oh, because I'm saving up for my children's education, or because I need a new car and I'm this close to having the bank financing all figured out, right? Emotional commitments are personal motivations, they're intrinsic motivations. Everybody's got them. And when there's a human to human relationship, an emotional commitment because I understand you as a person, you're not just a job title and a number, that emotional commitment is what's more likely, 4 times more likely, to get someone to apply additional discretionary effort. Now, here's something else most managers don't know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here because so many of you are in HR, but don't assume people know this. They really don't. People don't understand that employee engagement is incredibly important. It is, in fact, the primary enabler to execute on any successful business strategy. Just for fun, like when I'm doing executive coaching, I'll ask a CEO or a CFO sometimes a question like, you know, why is engagement important in your organization? And they mostly don't know, right? They'll dance around. We want people to feel good about working here. We want to have a positive culture. But this is the part they don't understand because nobody's connected the dots for them. Whatever you're trying to achieve in business, those profits, process improvements, product launches, whatever it might be, to successfully execute, you really want engagement. And this is the domino effect, the reason why it all fits together. Employee engagement means you're more likely to retain your higher potential folks because they're emotionally connected. They're not going to go anywhere. And when you retain those folks, not only do you reduce your costs related to hiring and onboarding folks, but you also are going to see increases in productivity. People are applying additional discretionary effort, and they've been here longer, so they have higher knowledge base and more experience. So by any metric, and it's been measured in so many ways, quality output, quantity output, reduced overtime, less absenteeism, tardies, better situations when it comes to fewer workers' comp claims, like by virtually any metric, you will see increased productivity when you improve employee engagement. And of course, that leads to customers who are more satisfied. And this is all common sense. More satisfied customers, higher productivity. That means more money coming in. Less overtime, less expenses for hiring and recruiting and onboarding. That means you save on expenses, so your profit margins improve. Now you're asking, okay, you started there at the second one, Dad, the puzzle pieces, they all fit together. But don't ignore the one on the left side. The number one driver of employee engagement is leadership development. I'm talking leadership at every level, not executive team. But it's extremely important at the level of manager because it is, more than any other factor, it is the manager's activities and attributes that cause that emotional connection to the manager, obviously, but also to the entire team and the organization and the job itself. And I'm just showing you a tip of the iceberg sort of level of information here. You're probably well steeped in this research, but if you're not, if you would like to learn more about any of this, let me know. I sort of gather this. I'm a researcher, and I enjoy being able to look at this from all the angles. Now, let me just summarize these benefits because I want you to know they're not itty bitty incremental differences. When you have higher levels of engagement, you can reap double-digit benefits in everything we've been talking about. That's why engagement is the primary enabler. And that's why it's so incredibly important for managers to fully understand the importance of engagement and be able to do their part. And they ought to be measured on doing their part to continually sustain and raise those levels of engagement. I'm going to go ahead and take the question here that's in the chat. You can put them in anytime. I'll leave room at the end too. But this question is there any soft skill other than communication that you think is important to have first-time managers focus on in their first year of people management? And the answer is a resounding yes. I do think, I'm glad you called out communication. I think that's incredibly important. But in line with engagement, it's not just communication. It's about building trust, which we'll talk about in just a moment. It's also about being able to critically think and problem solve so that people aren't frustrated and so managers don't become bottlenecks for problems, but they are able to do something about it. So critical thinking, decision making, problem solving would be the ones that come to my mind first about really critical soft skills you want your managers to have. And there's a lot in that bucket of communication, not just being able to deliver, but absolutely being able to receive and being able to get clarity going both directions because of asking good questions and being effective as a listener. So I appreciate that question, Shalana. That was engagement. Now let's talk about the second E that's really important. And as I talk about this, think about what could you measure? There's a lot. What could you measure inside your organization so that you're making employees more ready? Managers are equipping people. They allow for some autonomous decision making. They increase competence and provide challenges for people. They make the way easy. They remove the barriers. They are sensible in the ways that they ask people to allocate time. They aren't frustrating team members by just constantly giving them more to do or feedback about what to do differently, but they really are able to enable them with the training, the tools, the resources, the time necessary to learn and to grow. I will give you more specifics here about strategy in just a moment, but let me give you the other word, the one that you might not have heard as often. Just as important as enablement is ennoblement. I didn't make it up. It's a real word. It means to make someone feel worthy or important. It's the softer skill side of things. To make people feel heard, to dignify individuals, to demonstrate that you trust them, to cause them to feel like what I say matters. My manager listens and hears and takes seriously the things that I say. My manager makes time for me. I feel important because they don't always cancel my one-to-one meetings. I'm not just some metric, that they check in with me about what have you done for me lately. But I feel like I'm an important contributor to this team. Now you'll also see the word here when it comes to ennoblement, the very important word, trust. I'll just give you a little bit of research from someone who wrote in SHRM, Mark Pfeffer. You've probably seen a lot from him. He does work around great places to work. And engagement crops back up here, but he's linking trust and engagement together. And please notice what he says in the second paragraph. Trust is a two-way street. Yes, we want managers who are trustworthy, but we also need managers who are able to demonstrate that they trust employees. They trust employees to put organizational needs first. They trust employees to have some decision-making power, or at least contributions that are taken seriously. They trust employees enough that they're sharing information about the business, about the performance of the team, about what it takes to be successful. They trust employees enough to tap them into that bigger picture, as opposed to keeping them in a very narrow lane about job tasks that are ho-hum and not very engaging. This two-way trust is the essence of ennoblement. And you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, because if you've ever not felt trusted, even if it was vague, because nobody ever says, hey, I don't trust you, right? But if you ever felt like work was withheld, or nobody taught you something new, or nobody really took your opinions and thoughts seriously, if you didn't feel trusted, pretty soon that's a divide that just keeps getting wider and wider. And it's deadly when it comes to engagement levels. So I'd like to rapid fire now, give you 10 strategies for putting people first in ways that will engage, enable, and ennoble. Remember though, what we're really talking about is, can you measure some of these things at the level of manager? Can you find here that would be something you could measure so that managers will really do it, so that it will take concepts and make them day-to-day routines, things that are consistently being done within your business? We'll start with delegating. Some circles, that's a 4-letter word. But delegating is about letting go. Delegating is about giving people opportunities to expand and grow. Delegating is about making sure that you are constantly developing capacity. It's not something you do once in a while. It's not something you do only when a manager no longer likes the task and they just want to offload it somewhere else. But to continually delegate little bits at a time to everybody gives everyone a chance to grow. What you see on screen here, and you get a PDF of the slides, but these are the 8 steps of effective delegation. Most managers would tell you, yes, I delegate. And most managers would have to admit, if they looked at all 8 steps, that they aren't delegating as effectively as they could be because they're leaving out a few of these steps. So all 8 steps equal effective delegation. And when you use all 8 steps, you have an opportunity to measure delegation. How many tasks per employee did you delegate this quarter? How many of those were successful delegations? In other words, the employee thrived in doing the new work. They didn't get stuck because it was over their head, not explained well. They didn't feel like they could come back to the manager and get support that they needed to really master the new task. That's the first strategy. Second strategy is for managers to be coaches. Now, I wish we had more time. We could do a whole session. Kaylee, maybe we should do a whole session just on coaching and what does that even mean? Because coaching isn't the same as mentoring. It's not the same as managing. But coaching for development is about helping people develop confidence by setting their own goals, by being responsible, accountable for their own growth, by spending time before they get started on those goals, anticipating and talking about potential barriers that they might have, so that there's already a plan, a contingency plan when they encounter those barriers. Coaching is a discipline of its own. Managers here again might think that they're coaching, but usually when they say that, what they're doing is mentoring. They're advising. They're sharing knowledge as opposed to asking questions and promoting self-discovery. Coaching is very measurable. Employee sets a goal that was facilitated by coaching. Does the employee reach the goal or not reach the goal? That's an outcome of coaching. Of course, we've already talked about this one, and I see a few comments here in the chat about this, but yes, managers should enable training. It doesn't have to be 20 hours a week of training all year long. It can be a lunch and learn once a quarter. The whole team goes and attends a free session, maybe on People First Leadership Academy. I'll pop that into the chat for you. There's a lot of free learning that you can experience there on People First Leadership Academy. We have over 100 courses, but many of those courses, they're about soft skills and about leadership development or team development, team effectiveness, and being exposed to those ideas and having some accountabilities for implementing, let's say it's better meetings. Okay? People who have opportunities to learn in areas that are of interest for them, relevant for them, they become more engaged. And managers grow people when they afford them opportunities to have different kinds of learning like that. All right, the clock's not my friend. Let me get a few more of these in here before we run out of time. Team development. How effective is the team in reaching the team's goals? How frictionless are the handoffs between team members? How often do people say that they feel like they are a part of a team so that they aren't just doing it on their own? You could measure if team charters are created and if what the team charter says we're going to do is what actually is achieved. You could measure effectiveness of collaboration. Maybe you have something like that already in your engagement survey. So there are lots of things that you can measure at the manager level. You might also decide to measure one-to-one meetings. Now, I'm not a fan of check the box, we did it. I'm more a fan of we did it and it was successful. We achieved something. So if you really wanted your managers to have good one-to-one meetings, first of all, they'd happen. They'd happen on a regular cadence. They'd be high priority for the manager. They wouldn't be canceled as kind of a nice idea, but we're busy. They would be genuine connections where the focus is more on the future than it is the past, not report outs of how we did this week, but how are we prepared for next week. And they would be highly engaging for employees. They'd get high value out of the feedback they're receiving, out of the connections that they're making, leaving those meetings feeling a deeper level connection to the manager and to the team. I know that I'm going fast. I just am giving you a glossed over overview here. There's a lot more that you can find if you want to find deeper dives into this, and it's free. I'm not trying to sell you something, but I gave you that link. I'll give it to you again because I want you to have an opportunity to come and get what you need. All right, well, you could also be working on soft skills for managers themselves. Soft skills, I saw somebody added emotional intelligence, good call. I would agree with that. It's problematic when managers don't demonstrate and have high levels of EI. So managers continually developing soft skills, they then model that for others and grow in their own effectiveness. I'll give you a quick hit on some soft skills to think about in a contrast, right? Hard skills, the ones that you probably promoted your manager for having, versus soft skills and the things that you might like them to also be able to do now that they're in a managerial role. And these are all teachable. We're not talking about personality transplants for anyone. I don't believe in them. But for a manager, no matter what their personality and characteristics might be, being able to develop in these soft skills as well. When you're doing any of this training that I've just talked about, let me take Michelle's question. I think that you should document attendance, but that's not enough. Butts and seats and smile sheets are not adequate measures of training. There ought to be some skills check at the end. Is it a role play, depending on the kind of training it was? Is it a quiz? Is it commitments that people make? Something that talks about the application. And then longer term, I like a 3-week time frame for most kinds of training, but it's a check back. What are you using? What are you doing differently? What additional questions do you have? If you're going to do evaluations after training, do them 3 weeks after training, not right at the end of the training. Okay, so all kinds of training things here because it's about people growth. But there's also just this really simple, obvious sort of a thing. Managers often forget that these are people, not job titles. Right? So what? You oversee a team of salespeople. Before they were salespeople, they were just plain old people. People want to be trusted. People want managers who are available to them. That's an aspect of trust. People need and they expect mentoring. People want to get acquainted with others. Who's who in the organization? Make some connections, especially if you are in a remote work situation. Don't let people feel abandoned or alone as they work from home. Get people connected to the company values. This is not at all about turning bosses into buddies, but it's about managers understanding that part of their job is to lead people and to help people feel connected throughout the organization. Yes, it takes more time, but effective managers take steps, deliberate, on purpose steps, to bring every voice into the conversation. It's not, yeah, we had a meeting, they could have spoken up if they wanted to. It's, I went one-to-one to every person. I asked their opinion because this was going to impact the work that they did. I'm not making decisions based on majority rules, but I am making decisions based on I truly heard and considered the input of every person to avoid groupthink, to avoid moving too fast, to avoid overlooking people who might have very important contributions to make. For true inclusivity, everybody had an opportunity, a real opportunity to be heard. Effective managers, they give context. Here's the big picture. Here's what we're aiming for. Here's what we're looking to accomplish. And here's how your work contributes to that overarching vision. They provide the context. It's not do it because I said so. It's let's do this because it'll help us to achieve this vision, the one that matters to all of us. It's a shared vision. I'm linking those tasks to the vision. I'm providing that context because the word inspire, to inspire a shared vision, inspire means to breathe life into. And just like breathing, it has to happen over and over and over again. And one of the ways I'll reinforce achievements towards the vision is by recognizing and rewarding people. We're humans. People need it. People actually enjoy being able to see what it was that someone else did that made them successful, that you're looking for me to do too. I get it now because you were able to give me that context and you were able to show me those examples. All right, Kaylee, I'm going to turn this back over to you. I'll take the first question that's here in the Q&A, and then hopefully you'll bring me some other ones. The question is, how do you suggest that HR, L&D, leadership and development teams handle pushback from leaders? I love this question already. As we attempt to offer new trainings that touch on the areas you've mentioned, let's take that one first. You've got to enlist them in the shared vision. The senior executives especially. Here's why we would do the training. Here's the outcomes. Here's what we're going to measure. Here's why engagement is so important. Here's the link. Connect those dots. This training equals engagement. Engagement equals achieving the business goals that you'd like to achieve. It's something like that. It's about connecting the dots. And on average, how long should in-person trainings or virtual trainings last? Yeah, this is so dependent situationally on the kind of work that's being done, as well as the kind of training that you're doing. You have to read the audience. You have to know the needs. I believe that, especially in this day and age, you've got to break things down into manageable chunks. I have a training, for example, for managers that could be done. We used to do a lot, quite often in 2-day chunks, 2 whole days. Well, now I do it in 12 modular units virtually. And in between the times that we meet, there are little bits that people take away and they practice with, and they come back and they report on what they've done. And I think that's ended up being a lot more effective than what we can do in 2 full days, even though that's really efficient, especially if we're traveling. All right, limited organization or limited budget in a small organization. I'm gonna do a shameless self-promotion. Everything I do in my organization is built on accessibility to training with low budgets, to be able to make things affordable and to have an impact. And so take a look at the website I gave you in the Zoom chat, People First Potential. There's a lot there that's free, but there's also a program called Workplace Conversations. If you're talking about first-time manager training, that's a great place to start. We have public workshops, so you can send one person at a time. They'll interact with people from other organizations. It's all virtual, so it's fairly accessible and easy, and it's very affordable. All right, I've covered a lot. I hope everybody's walking away with at least one idea. Write it down, make a commitment to it, something that you can activate so that you're measuring what matters, and so you're driving employee success. And of course, GoCo has a lot they can offer here too that will be helpful. So Kaylee, let me hand it back to you for any additional questions or wrap-ups that we need.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Deb. before or when people register for the webinar, there's an opportunity for them to ask questions too. And there was a lot about leadership buy-in. And so I feel like maybe we could even do a whole session on that. But one question that really stuck out to me kind of goes with the question you already answered about leadership, but how do we get leadership to care about this throughout the entire year, not just maybe through like the performance review season or like end of Q4? Like how do we get them to think about this and care about this all year long?
It all starts with what do they care about? Like, what's the main thing? So let's say your CEO is talking about pressure from the board and stakeholders to drive 2% more profit this year. I'm making this up, but right, the CEO, the C-suite, there's already something that is a priority, most important to them. What is that? When you know what that is, then you start making the dots get connected. This is not like manipulative. It's not made up. Remember what I said, engagement is the primary enabler of any business strategy that you want to go after. So is it 2% profitability? Let's make the links. Here's how engagement would help us get there. We'd reduce expenses because we'd have less absenteeism. We'd save this much money on having to recruit for 15% fewer positions. We believe this training would drive higher productivity when it comes to quality and quantity. There's a story there if you take some time, and it's a real story. And that's how you'd get their buy-in. That's how you'd enlist their support and keep it, because it would be linked to what they already care about and get pressure for.
That is such great insight. I feel like I've taken away so many things that we can do future sessions on together. So I'm very excited. Thank you so much, Deb. This was great. And by the chat, I think that everyone else absolutely adored this session and had a lot of great takeaways as well. So thank you. And I will be sending out the slides and recording, as Deb said. So be on the lookout for that if you missed any of her steps or tips or anything like that. Do you mind if I share my screen really quick, Deb?
Not at all.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. There we go. Um, GoCo sponsored today's webinar. Again, my name is Kaylee Hanson. I'm the marketing campaigns manager here at GoCo. So if you have gotten any webinar invites or emails, they have most likely come from me. GoCo is an all-in-one HRIS, and our mission is to really automate those manual tasks so that you can spend more time focusing on growing your teams and making them happier, healthier, more productive. So I will actually right now launch just a quick poll. And if you would like to chat with GoCo about ways that you can improve your HR system or improve your HRIS, please mark yes, please. Also, can't talk about GoCo without talking about our great client success team here. It is 5 stars, and you get a dedicated client success manager on your team at GoCo to help you with any questions or concerns that you may have. And if you'd like to schedule a consultation directly, feel free to scan this QR code and we will give you a free coffee gift card on us. And Deb, again, just thank you so much for everything today. So informative. I will be including that People First link in the follow-up as well. So if anyone wants to check that out or has any questions for Deb, then you can reach her that way as well. Deb, anything you'd like to end on?
No, just so appreciate the interactivity of the audience here. That always makes it more fun for me too. And I get to learn a couple of things here and there. So appreciate you all. And whatever your favorite season is, I hope you get a chance to really enjoy it in 2025.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Deb. Can't wait for our next one together.
Me too.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.